So you're asking a question of, why do we need objective morality? Well, or what specifically?
Yeah, so not necessarily why we need objective morality, but you seem to be, because obviously I don't believe that it's a thing, but you seem to make the claim that
Do you believe that absolutely?
No.
Okay, good.
But
you're consistent.
yeah, the big thing is for me, even if I have a God, there is no thing telling me it's just like the is-ought problem, right? That's like my big contention, right? How am I ever going to derive a claim about what I should do from only statements about the nature of being?
Got it. So you would believe murder's wrong?
Yeah.
Why do you believe that?
Because in its definition, it says it's wrong, right? It's wrong killing of somebody, or at least that's my understanding of it.
Okay, so for example, you go to an African village, happens all the time. They leave a full-born baby by the fire. They don't want it. They discard it. Happens tons of times. Any missionary will tell you that. They just discard babies. Why? They don't believe it's wrong. It's just in their code and custom. No one feels bad about it. Just discard kids you don't want. Are they wrong?
For me, yeah, they're wrong. Yeah. It's a bullet I do have to bite for my worldview.
Hold on. Are they objectively wrong? Is it objective?
No. Because I don't believe in objective morality. So that can apply to any statement.
So it's not objectively wrong to leave a full-born baby by the fire and just say, you're on your own, have a nice life.
Well, yeah, I'm calling into question objective morality. So I obviously have to bite
No, I know.
that
I'm
bullet.
just trying to make you hear back how insane what you are saying.
Well, you're making a claim about the objectivity of it.
No,
you're
I know.
Not making a claim about whether it's wrong. Obviously, I think it's wrong.
Let's get more graphic. So you put 1,000 Jews in a gas chamber, and the Nazis thought what they were doing was good, and they pressed the button. Mm-hmm. Were they right or were they wrong in gassing millions of Jews?
Objectively, you can't, when you say, is it objectively wrong? Hold on, wait. If you say it's objectively wrong, you're implying that you can derive a truth value from it. And I don't think you can. So I don't think that you can make a true statement regarding whether something's good or bad.
Got it. So just to be clear, the Nazis could have been right in their actions, in your view.
That implies that right is an actual thing. I don't believe you can determine a truth value from a moral claim.
So the Nazis were not objectively evil?
Yeah, I just said that 4 times. You can't derive objective moral statements from, things.
I respect your intellectual clarity, and I will say...
And obviously, for clarity, I obviously think the Holocaust is wrong. So if anyone's questioning about that,
it's just your opinion. I believe that it's objectively wrong, no matter who you are or where you come from, because it transcends opinion. Do you think, last question, I appreciate your clarity on this, do you see how your view could result in a lot of dead people?
Well, I don't think my view is really I'm not making a claim that we should behave in a way.
No, you're making claims.
Well, I am making claims, yeah, but I'm not making a claim that, we should behave in a certain way or, that we ought to, not have Christianity or some kind of moral
I'm not saying
code.
that, but let me play this out, and I think you'll understand.
No, I understand, because you're going to say, well, there's all these bad things that could happen if people follow me.
Or that did happen. No, I'm not following you. If your view becomes a view of a country, and... For example, putting 1,000 Jews in a gas chamber is not deemed as objectively wrong, transcendent above anyone's opinion, then all of a sudden, what would prevent that evil thing from occurring and nobody questioning it?
Sure. So my main idea, I guess, with the worldview is I'm not making a claim, again, about how things should be. I'm making a claim that this is how things are. So within my, worldview, this is all fine. You can have people agreeing that things are wrong. Generally, I think most people's moral intuitions will lead them to thinking that things like murder is wrong and stealing is wrong because it makes you feel bad, right?
No, well,
if I see somebody get hurt, that makes me feel bad. If you see somebody die, that makes you feel bad.
Yeah, the SS guards didn't feel bad when they killed Jews, and that's okay. But do you see where this might unravel into mass murder and societal chaos?
Let's go! The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis. An example, if ever there was one, of big things, small packages. Because although this work is brief, and I mean exceedingly brief, it nonetheless is a seriously dense little book. It says a lot in a little, and a lot, I think, which has burning relevance to our world of today. It is a book which has been called one which has the potential to save Western civilization, an assessment with which I must confess I am inclined to agree. So, many people may just know C.S. Lewis as the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, or perhaps also as a notable Christian apologist, actually the preeminent Christian apologist of modern times. But what a lot of people may not be aware of is that Lewis studied and I believe had a degree in philosophy. He could pontificate with the best of them, and nowhere is that on better display than in this book, The Abolition of Man. As I said, an exceedingly brief work which defends objective values and warns of the dangers inherent in subjectivism. Now, this work is actually a transcript of 3 lectures which Lewis gave, I believe in 1943 or thereabouts. It was while World War II was ongoing. And it is divided into 3 sections, as it would be. Section 1 is entitled Men Without Chests. The second section is entitled The Way, and the third and titular section, The Abolition of Man. Now, the genesis of this work comes from Lewis's exposure to a book, which is never identified by name, nor are the authors of the book. It is referred to in the text only as the Green Book, and its authors are referred to as Gaius and Titius. The Green Book is a textbook from English schools at the time, a textbook with which Lewis took great issue and within which Lewis saw great danger. And so the resulting work entitled The Abolition of Man is Lewis pushing back against the Green Book and really all that the Green Book represents. What Lewis took issue with in the Green Book was the kind of subjectivism and moreover kind of ethical subjectivism which was implicit in the perspective of the authors known only as Gaius and Titius. Basically, in the Green Book, the authors made the argument that humans cannot say anything concrete about the world in terms of value judgments. There are no absolutes. The example that they give in this Green Book is the assessment of a waterfall as being either sublime or merely just pretty. They say that these are merely the emotional responses of the spectators, and that external reality cannot be gauged in absolute terms as regards the judgments of value. Lewis, as I said, takes some great issue with this because he sees in this not only a very dangerous trend, but also kind of an absurd trend, because the negation of absolute values, of objective values, is a self-defeating purpose, as Lewis kind of explicates. The authors, Gaius and Titius, are what he calls debunkers. They're debunking or attempting to debunk objective values, but at the end of the day, what foundation does such a process of debunking rest upon except the belief on the part of the debunkers that ultimately there is some objective good towards which they are moving? That is to say, Gaius and Titius are calling into question the validity of objective values as regards things such as courage, sublimity, loyalty, and such, and saying that these things cannot be concretely declared to be good or bad. It's just, it's subjective to each person. But they're doing that in pursuit of an end which they themselves would deem to be good. But the thing is that they would be rather hard pressed if they were to admit that they are only pursuing that end because they think that it's right. Rather, they're doing what they're doing because they themselves deep down do believe that there is some kind of true good that can be called out in the world. But what Lewis says the dangers of this is because it creates what he calls men without chests. Men without chest is a reference to, I believe it is, the Republic by Plato, the old analogy of the head ruling the belly through the chest. That is, the mind regulating the body through the heart, the mind governing the body through the heart. And what Lewis says the result of the debunking of Gaius and Titius will be is the creation of men without chests, men who are either governed solely by their instincts, the body, or who are overly intellectual, who are governed only by the mind with no mediating thing to balance them. And I think that we can see that quite plainly in our world of today. On one hand, you have figures such as, I might say, Andrew Tate, who advocates a kind of just flat out animalistic degeneracy, very kind of hedonistic and bestial kind of in their outlook. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have rather hyper effete intelligentsia who are kind of what I would call the actually bros. You know that meme, it's like, well, actually, we can't say anything is good or bad because it's all just subjective. They're so disconnected from objective reality because they basically debunked everything, that they're just off in the ether of their own subjective experience, and they've been so hyper intellectualized that they're also quite dangerous, you might say, because they will and do endorse some seriously insane positions. But that is the subject of the first of the three sections of the Abolition of Man, is that the move away from objective values, the negation of objective values, of objectivity at all, is not only absurd, because upon what grounds are you basing such a negation, but also it is very dangerous because it produces or will produce humans who are not fully developed, who are not very well balanced in their characters. And it is a real testament, I think, to the powers of Lewis's insight as regards this, that he was able to see or foresee in a seemingly innocuous school textbook the complete postmodern breakdown of objectivity with which we are having to contend now in the world of today. That is the first section. Now, the second section is called The Way. And in this section, Lewis asserts the existence of an objective moral standard that all people are able to recognize and which they should rightly strive to adhere to. And he gives in the back of the book evidence for what he refers to somewhat idiosyncratically as the Tao, or the way, or really in what you would call in more Western philosophical terms, natural law. And he backs up his assertion that natural law does exist by such universally recognized tenets as thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery. People all over the world throughout all different times and eras have been able to recognize and agree pretty much on certain fundamental moral tenets, such as don't hurt other people, don't kill other people, don't cheat on people, etc. And Lewis uses this to back up his claim that the Tao, that is his kind of idiosyncratic way of saying natural law, does exist, and that people rightly have an obligation to adhere as much as possible to the Tao. And when they don't adhere to the Tao, all they are adhering to is themselves. And this is where the book really starts to get dense, because what Lewis states is that if you don't recognize an objective external standard of conduct, then all that you are left with is your own subjective standard, your own wants, your own desires. And that leads from the second part into the third and final part, the abolition of man. And in this section of the book, Lewis discusses science and the potential for the abuse of science regarding man's conquest over nature, or perhaps nature's conquest over man. Coming off of the last section, Lewis says that if you don't adhere to the Tao, if you don't adhere to natural law, if you do not recognize that there are things that can be conclusively decreed to be wrong or right, then all you're left with is your own subjective wants and desires. Now, Lewis says that the pursuit of science has commonly been perceived to be the pursuit of man's mastery over nature, of man solving the mysteries of nature and making nature bend to his will. But what Lewis points out is that really what it all boils down to is merely the mastery of some people over other people if the Tao is not rightly adhered to. What he means is that if you do not conduct scientific inquiry, scientific research, the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of power with the Tao always in mind, then you basically have carte blanche to do whatever you want to, because your only cynosure at that point is yourself. And so ultimately, Lewis posits that the breakdown in objectivity, which the Green Book presages, is the kind of starting point for people breaking away from a common morality and imposing their will onto the world, onto other men. That's what the dichotomy comes down to. Either you believe in an objective standard of conduct, or you believe only in your opinion. That there is no other way. You either have objectivity or subjectivity. There's literally no other choice. And what Lewis points out is that breaking from objective values, breaking from natural law, breaking from the Tao, is actually allowing nature to conquer man. Even though we may think that, we're blazing the trail forward into the future, that we're mastering this and that, really we are allowing ourselves to be mastered by nature, because it is the adherence to objective standards which is what separates man from nature. If you break from the Tao, if you believe that you are God, that you have the authority to impose upon other people your subjective will, then you have literally forfeited your own humanity, in other words, because you are now allowing yourself to be ruled by nature. The distinction between man and animal then becomes not one which is qualitative, but only one which is quantitative. And it's important to remember that this book was written while World War II was ongoing, and there were very blatant and also not so blatant attempts at that time in the world to basically refashion the human species, which is exactly what Lewis is warning about when we break from the Tao, when we believe that there is no objective value that transcends all people, then that gives some people the license to impose their desires upon other people, the other people that are not strong enough to resist that, or have no means of defense against that. And we see this, of course, in Nazi Germany. The Third Reich was a very blatant attempt at remaking humanity in a very physical, racial sense. The activities of the Nazis were a very unapologetic and open attempt at remolding, reconfiguring humanity according to the designs of a select and devious few. But also we can see this in communist countries such as in the USSR, because Marxism is itself nothing less than an attempt at reconstituting humanity entirely. Economics is merely one aspect of the Marxist goal. Marxism at its heart is the desire for the total reconstitution of mankind. But the problem is that only has been done historically because it can only be done according to the whims of those with the power to implement such policies. But we also see it now in our world with certain other devious figures. Of course, I'm talking specifically about Klaus Schwab and his band of demonic cohorts at the WEF. The now quite well-known phrase, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." What is that statement except a declaration by some of the intent to dispose of others according to their own whims. The threat that is posed by breaking from the Tao and believing that we individually have the right to impose a certain vision upon the rest of mankind is manifest, and it is manifestly horrifying. But the thing that Lewis does here that really kind of puts the icing on the cake on his argument is that he actually concedes that this may actually be possible. Now, the thing about Nazism or communism or such ideologies is that a lot of people will say they are untenable. In fact, I would say that myself. It is my personal belief that the farther that you move from the Tao, the farther that you move from the way, the farther that you move from natural law, the farther that you move from what is objectively right, the more unsustainable your system or ideology becomes. So I would personally aver that anything that moves outside of the Tao, or extremely outside of the Tao anyhow, anything that completely untethers itself from objectivity and objective moral right is doomed to fail because it is unsustainable. But Lewis takes a different tact when arguing his case in this book, because he actually concedes that perhaps this may actually be feasible, that given it long enough and given enough technological advancement, we may actually reach a point at which certain people will be able to reprogram, for lack of a better word, humanity to behave as they would have it, and that at that point humanity will cease to be human. That is, again, kind of the piece de resistance of Lewis's argument here, is that we will forfeit our humanity by doing this. That the break with objective value, with objective standards, with objective moral standards is a literal forfeiture of our human nature, because we are abrogating our human nature in favor of allowing nature to rule us. And it's a magnificently simple yet dismal conclusion that he comes to of just how many of us are willing to abandon literally our souls to achieve their ends. So yeah, that is The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis. It is a book of such vital importance that I don't know that words, or at least my words, can do it justice. It is a book that demands to be read, that demands to be read to fully understand, I think, many of the plights and conundrums of our modern world, because this book was prophetic. It is, and you know, I take no pleasure in saying that, because it is bleakly prophetic, but it was prophetic. And again, Lewis was able to foresee in something as seemingly innocuous as a school textbook the later total postmodern collapse of objectivity and the sinister belief by certain peoples that they have the right to do with the bulk of humanity what they wish, because they truly want to be God. That is what the ultimate thing, I think, to be taken from this is that if you don't believe in something, and again, Lewis actually is not arguing from a Christian standpoint in this. He is actually arguing at a remove from his typical Christian stance. But what he's saying is that even if you don't agree with Christianity, even if you don't believe in those specific religious tenets, you must acknowledge that if there is no external objective standard which all people are bound by, then anything goes. Literally anything goes, because people thereby have the license to do whatever they please insofar as they can. So once again, this is a book of the utmost importance, I think, to read for the world of today. And I would, I think, like to end with by reading Lewis's ending to the book here, because I think it sums it all up quite well. But you cannot go on explaining away forever. You will find that you have explained explanation itself away. You cannot go on seeing through things forever. The whole point of seeing through something is to see something through it. It is good that the window should be transparent because the street or garden beyond it is opaque. How if you saw through the garden too? It is no use trying to see through first principles. If you see through everything, then everything is transparent. But a wholly transparent world is an invisible world. To see through all things is the same as not to see. That is how Lewis concludes his book, and I think that it does a wonderful job of summing up his argumentation. Now, with works such as this of more philosophical character, I generally abstain from rating them, but I will do so here with this book as well. But I do want to say this. As I have said, this book is one of such vital importance that so many people, I think, need to read, and that can show so many people some of the things that are fundamentally wrong with our world now. It's something of a diagnostic, really, sadly. But I will say this, it is not only a work of great intellectual merit, it is a work also of great literary merit too, because good Lord, the writing in this book is freaking gorgeous. Lewis, of course, was a writer, a man of letters, and that shines through just as much as the philosophy does. It shines through in the prose because it is a gorgeously written book. The metaphors that he uses in this, the way that he paints his pictures with words is truly just next level stuff. It is a fantastically written book. In fact, I would argue that it's probably the best written in a literary sense of any work of philosophy that you're liable to read. I'll go on record saying that right now. So I think this book is not only vitally important, I think it's also enjoyable to read because of just how well it's written. So yes, The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis. I won't grade it as I normally do because those kind of standards may not apply, but I will say I think personally it is once more just of the utmost importance and utmost pertinence to our modern milieu. And also I think it's just fantastically written and truly just kind of a pleasure to read because of how well Lewis strings his sentences together. So yeah, fantastic book in my opinion. The Abolition of Man. Have you read it? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said about it here today. And if you haven't read The Abolition of Man, this is like one of the most forceful recommendations I can give on this channel. You know, the point of BookTube at all, I guess, is to perhaps expose people out there to new books and perhaps inspire them to pick up certain things to read. This right here would be one of the most forceful, again, recommendations that I can give. This is a book that demands to be read. This is a book that needs to be read. This book really does have the potential perhaps to save Western civilization. So that is the hardest of recommendations for me. If you haven't read The Abolition of Man, you need to. You need to acquaint yourself with the nature of the enemy which we face in our modern world. So yeah, pick it up. I think it is. It very well may eventually at least be a matter of life and death that enough people read this book and understand what it says. It is that important in my opinion. But as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.